You are listening to the Break Time Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Jennifer Reif, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. As we near the end of the year, I want to review a few highlights from this year, 2024, and think about plans and ideas for next year. I also came across an article that, while it's geared towards PR and marketing audiences, it actually mirrors developer advocacy approaches to communication. We'll get into that a little bit later. To start us off, I wanted to look at kind of 2024 overview as I've seen it this year. So a kind of recap, if you will. Overall in the market, AI is still very strong. There's been new concepts for agents and topics like graph RAG that have hit and really made a big splash in the overall technology market. I've also seen a lot of stabilization as far as going past chatbots a little bit and exploring technologies, new tools cropping up, new capabilities, and starting to see some consolidation on what we feel LLMs are good and not so good at. On a personal level, I've also had a lot of room to grow this year and a lot of things that have kept me busy. I'll just highlight a few of these. This is not comprehensive at all, but just a few things that I've really enjoyed doing this year and felt that I've made some good progress. And then, of course, some things that I'd like to look into or maybe improve for next year. So to start us off for 2024, I really dove a little bit deeper into Spring AI. Again, I'm not as knowledgeable as I'd like to be. There's always room to grow here, but I felt towards the end of the year especially, I started to get a little bit more comfortable with kind of the process, the ins and outs of documentation, how things worked, what kind of the flow and the trajectory of things were starting to look like. I also, in the late summer, started this Break Time Tech Talks podcast, which I've really enjoyed doing. It's pushed me a little bit outside my comfort zone. I have been forced to really look at everything that I'm learning each week and pulling lots of content together of things that I'm reading, things that might be interesting, things that I'm learning, progress I've made, little tidbits and helpful hints that I come across throughout the days. And I've really enjoyed sharing that here in this format. I hope you have learned from that as well. I've definitely enjoyed it. Going along with kind of the Spring AI stuff is that I built a Graph Academy Spring Data Neo4j course. If you're not familiar with what Graph Academy is, it's Neo4j's online self-paced learning platform. And they're all online self-paced courses and entirely free. And I built a Spring Data Neo4j course. This means that it's a walkthrough of how to use Neo4j with Spring Data and really get the maximum benefits out of Spring data capabilities and then the Neo4j graph database component using the database with Spring Data. That was a lot of fun. I learned a lot along the way. And of course, this is going to be iterative. I hope to continue improving that and tweaking that as we go into next year as well. Also for this year, I did a lot more travel than partially what I anticipated, and also partially just from previous years. I didn't do much travel. I had family things and, of course, the pandemic going on where there wasn't a whole lot of travel. So this was really the first year that I opened that back up and started doing some travel. And I ended up doing a little bit more than what I anticipated and maybe what I had planned on doing, but it really was great opportunities to connect with the community, met a lot of new people, connected with a lot of former colleagues and people that I hadn't seen in years, and then also met some brand new colleagues that I hadn't had a chance to meet yet. This was really helpful and really a lot of fun and really a huge learning. Getting back into the travel game a little bit, I had to kind of relearn some things and adapt to the changes in my habits and my preferences now. And then also just to connect with people and developers and see what they're doing and the problems they're running up against in their spaces. I also felt a little bit of improved confidence in just general skills and knowledge. So navigating the tools and the technologies that I use on a day-to-day basis, relating new technologies and concepts to ones that I already know. I have just felt more comfortable and at ease learning new things and getting a handle on things. However, technology has a very common thing that it will still keep you very humble. So you run across bumps and things that trip you up that you're like, oh, that's a silly mistake. I should know, typos, for instance. I mean, that's going to destroy your whole program. Still to this day, you can't get away from that. But things like that always keep you humble. And so while I've improved and am feeling more confident with technology in general, things still have a way to keep me humble. I enjoy that, and I hope that continues as well. I also this year had lots of plate spinning with some of the travel requirements and presentations and content and demos and coding things that I was doing that put up a lot more plates for me to keep going, plus spinning up this podcast, trying to keep a blog alive, and lots of other demands on my time. I was really forced to prioritize and be a bit ruthless when it came to prioritization. I'm still not great at this. This is something I want to continue improving just over time in general. But I really felt a little bit more comfortable doing that and more comfortable kind of setting boundaries of what I thought was possible and what I didn't think I could handle. I also felt like this year with some of the events, I just planned on opening the doors and traveling a little bit again and connecting at certain events. But I ended up traveling more than what I anticipated. And part of this, I think, was because I didn't plan ahead super well. What I mean by that is that I anticipated I would take on an event as they came and just participate where I could and where I felt I could provide the most value. But what ended up happening is I would get requests or a CFP would pop up that I was really interested in and I wanted to take it on. And so I just tossed something out there. And well, then if you get accepted or if you get tagged in on something, you end up with this more lengthy list than what you anticipated. It just really provided a lot of additional work. You had the travel planning and bookings, and then you had the content. And if I had back-to-back travel plans, so things that happened either in the same month or even just next door months, that would crunch the other things that I could do because I was building new content, new things, updating things, and keeping things fresh. Especially with, I felt like this AI industry moved very, very quickly. And so versions of things would change and processes and methods and code would need to be updated constantly. And so that left less time to do other things because of the previous commitments. The one way I want to combat that next year is to be just a little bit more intentional about saying, here are the events I really want to attend. Then if I do all of these things, this is what my schedule looks like. So then I either cannot take on anymore, or I can only take on a certain set of things on top of that. I did that already for 2025 and things are looking good. I'm hoping I can stick to that just a little bit better. I have a tendency to want to jump in and do things and explore and try new things, but I'm hoping I can really prevent scope creep in this case, but for travel and presentations. Another thing I would like to look at for 2025 is data and integrating current data stores with AI. I think this will be increasingly important next year as, again, we've as an industry gotten a handle on AI and LLMs and where they excel and where they lack. I think that data and integrating our current data stores and our current data systems and knowledge within companies or private data stores, et cetera, is going to be increasingly important. And then, of course, all of the topics that surround that, so things like AI ethics and privacy and so on, are going to continue to permeate all of our topics. I also really want to explore a little bit more of AI topics, specifically LangChain4j. I really had anticipated getting a chance to dive deep and explore this library, which is one of the options for AI frameworks in the Java space, along with Spring AI. And I just really haven't had a chance to dive into LangChain4j and had a good block of time to do that. So I'm really hoping that 2025, I can block some time and really dig into this. Also looking more into LLMs. So looking at local LLMs, evaluation of LLMs, tapping into the agentic approaches and tools, concepts a little bit more, and really exploring more in depth of what LLMs can do. Then understanding the Python and the Java ecosystem better, especially in the AI spaces, but just generally too. Python is where the bleeding edge stuff is right now. And so just understanding Python, being able to work with it a little bit easier and better, I think would really make me more comfortable and just be a lot of fun as well and expand my learning. I also have, for the last several years, been interested in some cybersecurity topics, and I'd really like to explore that a little bit better and play around with some things and tools and see where that takes me. Of course, I always want to create more blog posts and podcast content. I hope to be able to do that through 2025 as well. I've really enjoyed this space and the blogging space to share what I've learned and explore different technologies, so I want to be able to continue doing that as well. Of course, more conferences with code and exploration projects, again, just increasing my own learning and then sharing what I've learned in a variety of different ways, and then be very intentional about planning ahead, which I talked about earlier. The article that I came across is actually geared more towards marketing and PR topics, but I thought that it overlapped really well with developer audiences and developer advocacy approaches. So the article name is Always Be Launching. And again, it's geared toward marketing and PR messaging and those audiences. But what I really liked was the concept of talking to people like humans, which is what developer relations and advocacy really has focused on, at least as long as I've been in the industry. The article talks about steady, honest drip of content. This is due to the social media market as it is, and just the style of the way that people like to take in content and be talked to. That has changed a lot of the marketing and PR approaches and messaging in the way that we talk to just generally people, but specifically developers too. Companies in general have moved away from the big launch splashes. I remember when this was kind of a thing. This is an interesting realization I never really thought of. Over the course of the few years, you have seen fewer and fewer big launch splashes. Of course, you have major technologies or new releases of things that will pop, but I don't feel like there's as big of a PR and marketing splash as what there used to be. And we also have much more frequent changes and updates in the industry. And so these big launch splashes, all of the work and effort that goes into them, they quickly become out of date and you're moving on to the next thing. Social media has changed the way that we view news, media, and communication with various audiences, and also the content strategy better paces fast-moving tech industries. As the tech industry moves very, very quickly, then we also need to keep up on the content end of things. Today, we recapped a bit of my year in 2024 and looked into what I hope to spend some time on in 2025. Then I noodled on some concepts that surfaced in an article on how tech updates and releases are handled and the style that the audiences now prefer with a constant drip and casual messaging, which aligns with a lot of developer advocacy approaches. I hope you all have a satisfying close to 2024 and cheers to 2025, and looking forward to chatting here in the new year.